kept giving his life to God. And then he started meeting girls and having sex with them and started giving his life to the girls that he'd met. And I could identify with that.
So why do you think that, I'm sure this is not unique to Seventh-day Adventist Christians, I mean, from whence comes all this sexual angst, do you think?
From whence comes all this sexual angst? Thinking out loud.
A lot of people who have moved beyond their conservative upbringing seem to have some issues that manifest throughout their lives. I mean, in your case, you've obviously, you've been a prolific porn blogger. You've taken some really radical steps in your life, and I can only surmise that some of the seeds of that were sown in the intensity of the theology of your youth.
Yeah, well, I think it's actually a rage against the smothering female. Seventh-day Adventism is a very feminine religion. It's all about kind of healing and caring, and it was basically founded and directed by a woman, Ellen G. White.
She's like the prophet of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, yeah.
Right, and it's very against competition, and it's very feminine, and it's smothering, and it's like completely rejects lust, and just really has a hard-on against any sort of sexual sin. And this smothering approach for me just fueled rage and rebellion. And I was talking about this with my therapist, and I was just describing my sexual fantasies, and he said, "Well, that sounds like eroticized rage." And I said, "Well, what's eroticized rage?" And
what is eroticized rage? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's anger sexualized, and it's basically a reaction to an overpowering mother figure. So if you felt smothered by women or by your mother when you were a kid, you're likely to hate women all your life, or at least have a push in that direction. And so you grow up to want to degrade women. And that's certainly true for me. And I think it was like a reaction to the kind of the smothering feminine influence that I had sitting on top of me as I was growing up as Seventh-day Adventist.
The question I get is, how do you get from smothering feminine to installing baboon hearts in babies?
Well, the Adventist Church is an interesting mixture. So there are the medical doctors are like this competing center of power. Basically, the church is run by its administrators. It's a hierarchical church, but there is this competing center of power, and it's the doctors, and they have the money and much of the prestige in the outside world. Overall, Seventh-day Adventists make almost no impact on the world. If all Seventh-day Adventists disappeared tomorrow, the world would go on largely unchanged. The one area where Seventh-day Adventists have made some impacts on the world is through their doctors.
Through the health system, absolutely.
Yeah, but aside from that, it's amazing that there are 20 million Seventh-day Adventists in the world, and yet, aside from medicine, they rank nowhere in the top individuals of any category.
Well, I think that some of the other major, I without naming names, I can think of at least one other, major American-based Protestant or religious faction that emerged around the same time as the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they certainly seem to have more dominance in business and politics than the SDAs. But
yeah, you think about the Mormon Church?
That would be sure.
Yeah, they have much more influence on business and politics and this world. When you enter Seventh-day Adventism, you kind of leave history, you kind of leave humanity, and you become a very otherworldly, removed person, without fully knowing it. So the odds of you becoming a Seventh-day Adventist or living a Seventh-day Adventist life and having an impact on the world in the fields of business or art or movies or economics or philosophy or politics or finance are virtually nil.
So on balance, you would find yourself bitter against your childhood upbringing?
No, there would certainly be elements of that. It's like,
but everybody's got those kinds of factions, and those kinds.
Yeah,
of,
like if you ask me my feelings about anybody that I've had a close involvement with, the feelings would range. There'd be feelings of hatred, and there'd be feelings of love, and feelings of respect, and so my feelings about my Seventh-day Adventist upbringing are all over the map. There are certainly things, I guess, that I'm bitter and angry about, and things that I'm grateful for, and things that I found hilarious, and things that I found worthy of respect. So it's a topic, obviously, that still involves me because I still blog on it.
Sure. On a slightly different topic, what do women want? Tell us what you.
I love this question. I'm fascinated by it, and I think that women most want a man that they can admire.
And that means different things in different cultures, or it means the same thing across cultures, you think?
Well, I think there's more commonality. So a man that they can admire is strong and can protect them and can provide for them and can stop her from her own worst enemy, which is herself.
Oh, boy.
So women are frightened if their man is not strong enough to stop her from destroying herself. So I think strength is the primary thing that women look for in a man.
Do you feel that you do you feel that you learned this and other things from your blogging and from your interviews and kind of your journalistic stance that you've taken?
Yeah, it's a topic that I'm fascinated by. I've never been married. I've had my share of relationships. But women are an endless topic of fascination for me.
Any other questions, Paul?
What does the future hold for yourself? Now that you're not blogging on the porn industry, you've obviously taken the advice of your rabbi and found other means of paying the bills, so to speak. What does the future hold for you? What can we expect on the internet and the rest of the world of communication from you?
Well, I think I'll be writing until the day I die. I love to write, and I love to write about religious, moral issues, sexual issues, political issues, social issues, my own life, things that I learned through psychotherapy, through 12-step programs. I've been going to various sex addiction 12-step programs that I find fascinating. And also I will graduate to become a teacher of the Alexander Technique in December. So I'll also be devoting much of my life to teaching Alexander Technique.
What is Alexander Technique, Luke Ford?
Alexander Technique is a way of learning to move the way the body likes to move. So it's about spotting your ways that you're unnecessarily compressing, tightening, and interfering with the way you operate, and learning to let go of these destructive patterns of needless tension so that you can free yourself up.
Is it primarily a physiological thing? Is there a psychological component? Is it more like Pilates or yoga? I mean, I don't know.
It's not like anything else, and it views human beings as a whole. So it's not primarily mental or physical or emotional, but it views all those things as a whole. So I'd say it's primarily cognitively directed awareness of yourself. So, like as we're speaking right now, what do you notice about yourself? Where do you find yourself holding? Where do you find yourself tightening, compressing? Where do you have pain in your body? The whole thing started with an actor who was losing his voice. Every time he'd go to have a big performance, he found he was losing his voice. And as his voice had been perfectly fine up until his big performance, he realized it was something he was doing when he was orating that was causing him to lose his voice. So he sat down in a room filled with mirrors. He saw that every time he'd go to speak, publicly to project his voice, he'd tip his head back, he'd kind of hunch his shoulders and compress his voice box. And so by learning to let go of these stifling, interfering tension patterns, he was able to project his voice and carry on a performance without losing his voice. And then he started teaching other people. And he moved to the United Kingdom, moved to London in around 1900, and within a few years, he was making the equivalent of $1 million a year in today's money, teaching.
Hey, I want to get involved in that action, man. That sounds great. But seriously, could you briefly describe